Oh well, today I am a little girl, because this is my personal diary. Not much has happened since yesterday from Blizzard's end. There have not been many crucial changes, many sneak fixes and hotfixes and patches that change something. The only major thing that people have been complaining about, and to be fair, I don't want to be pedantic, but people have been complaining about this since the beta, there are problems when you switch covenants, as well as when you skip the introductory tour of your covenant hall. Essentially, the end of this entire intro is going to give you 500 anima, 5 redeemed souls, and a 155 item level pair of gloves. Now, people essentially have gotten stuck. When they change covenants, they can't continue their chapter on their new covenant, and people who skip the introductory quest miss out on the item, miss out on the anima, and miss out on the redeemed souls. Now, missing out on the anima is annoying, but it's not that crucial. Missing out on the pair of gloves is even less crucial, especially because you can just buy them for 100 anima. Missing out on redeemed souls is actually pretty annoying, because redeemed souls are the ones you're going to need to upgrade your buildings. Particularly the first 5 you need are the ones needed to build your first building in your covenant hall. So problems, Blizzard had to apply an hotfix yesterday, and then another hotfix, and then another hotfix, and yet there are people still with problems. So let me know if any one of you here is having the same problem. No real reason to letting me know. Actually, I can't do anything about it. I can just maybe laugh at you, but nothing else. But hey, we are sharing here, so you're also sharing your misfortunes. But beyond this little misstep, this little problem, with nothing else to talk about on Blizzard's end, we enter the community question segment. This is where a title and a nice little music comes in. There is some applause in the back. And then I come in with the hard-hitting questions. Now the first question is going to be, as you hit max level, did you just complete the content at random? Or did you think about it beforehand? Because to me, when I looked at what to do as soon as you hit max level, you had 2 options. Number 1, you clean up all of your quest log. All of the stuff that's in the back of your head or in the back of your character that you know you need to do, right? The introductory question for Torghast, and then the one for the Maw, and then the one for your Covenant halls and all the quests there, and then the 3 callings that pop up, and then the world quests, and then maybe maxing up your professions, maybe start looking into that. And then finally you have all of that done. The only thing you have left is either the weekly to get the anima, if you can't get the 1000 immediately, and a couple of them that are gated by time, but the rest is done, clean, and you can go and do dungeons. Or you could just hit max level and immediately jump into dungeons and leave all of this stuff for the end of the week. Why did I think about this, and why did I think this was a good question? Although mostly useless, since most people's answer is going to be, I just went random, lol. It's a good question because if you do dungeons first, you're gonna get a bunch of gear. And if you get a bunch of gear, it means you can do Torghast, you can do the Maw, you can do the world quest and the callings much faster, because you're gonna hit max level at around 140 item level, and then you have to do all of that open world solo content at 140 item level. If you ignored all this content, all this backlog of quests, to just jump into dungeons first, you can come out on Monday or Tuesday, maybe Monday to be safe, 30 item levels higher. So now suddenly your Torghast, your Maw becomes much more manageable. So I think this was an interesting question. Obviously, you still have to do your daily Stygia cap, regardless of your item level, but beyond the daily thing, all of the rest of the stuff could have been delayed for later. I think this was an interesting question. For me, it was just... For me, I've always been the type of guy that leaves the best for last. I eat my broccoli first, to leave the fries and the steak for last. I do the homework as soon as I get home, so I can do cool stuff after. So for hitting max level, it was the exact same thing. I did all of that by the numbers, compiling stuff at the start and leaving dungeons for later, which is why I didn't have much to say in my diary about what I did today with my characters, because it was literally nothing but callings and Maw and Torghast on all the characters without basically any dungeon. Now, time to be nostalgic though, because of this next question. How many of you are missing the Flight Master's whistle? Especially after I had to go through all of this bureaucratic stuff on 3 different characters, plenty of occasions where I wished I had a Flight Master's whistle, particularly in the Maw. The Maw is literally hell to traverse and navigate, so the Flight Master's whistle would have helped quite a lot. Now, to be fair, demo can and will become much easier to traverse if you're willing to spend Stygia on it. All of this combined is going to cost you 2/3 of a socket. Of course, people are going to say, really? I'm gonna get a socket 3 days later and I can just cut my time spent in demo by like 15 minutes just because of this? Fuck the socket, give me this, right? There is this option. Of course, it just feels bad that you have to spend Stygia for all this good stuff. But for your own sanity, I would recommend to use and pick up all this stuff. It is going to, in the end, become better than the Flight Master's Whistle, actually, although it's going to cost you some resources. Now, looking at another question sent by the President. The question is, what does your Feelycrafty tell you right now? Don't look at a guide, don't look at a prediction, or don't tell me what a streamer told you. Don't tell me what a YouTuber told you, not even me. Tell me, after you went into Heroics and after you went in Mythic Zeros, what completely unbased and unfounded opinion have you made about the specs right now? The current state. Even the better specs to do solo content, the better specs to do AoE damage or single target damage. Again, with absolutely no proof whatsoever. Don't link me to Sims. Don't tell me what Theory Crafter Bob told you. That's not what the President wants to know. The question is purely based on feeling. On something as fickle and as useless as a Mythic Zero run that you just did. So let me know, and you'll make the President happy. As for the last question of the day, my question is professions. I'm not asking about your real life professions. We know you're all jobless. The question is the professions in game. It is something I essentially never talked about. Why? Because of course my answer is they're useless. But I want to know about your point of view. On my 3 characters, the start of them, the first part for leveling, of course, it was Gathering, or double Herbalism and Skinning, and then Alchemy and Inscription for the Herbalism part, and then Leatherworking for the Skinning part. And then the Herbalism would be converted into Enchanting and Jewel Crafting. But what about you? It would be a little bit, expected to tell me that they are boring and useless, because that's kind of what they are, but I want to know if any one of you has seen the light and found some unexpected cool things from professions. There's not even the old Legion storylines and quest lines from professions either, so they seem rather dull, this expansion, quite honestly. Now we're going to talk about my own stuff. What's going on right now? Delving into my diary. Dear diary, I lied to you. I said I would have leveled a rogue, and then I didn't. So I'm sorry for this betrayal, but I really started thinking about it in the last few days before the release of the expansion, that the real reason for playing rogue, after I chose my main elemental and my mythic plus character, the monk, the third character should have been a character that could have played an alternative spec for my raid alongside elemental shaman, and subtlety rogue was very good for that. It was a good idea. The problem is, outside of that very small option that we might need an extra subtlety rogue over an elemental shaman in the raid, I would have been outside of the raid, doing whatever else you do. And in Mythic Plus, for example, Outlaw is one of the better specs, and I really hate Outlaw. I don't like how it plays. So the option of leveling a rogue just to then not raid and have as the only option to do Mythic Plus in a spec I don't like didn't feel too compelling. So I went back, I tracked back at my possible specs and classes I wanted to play. I was interested in Guardian Druid, in Resto Druid, at least when it comes to Mythic Plus, and Balance Druid as well, for both Mythic Plus and raids. So even though in my original choosing the main video, Priest and DK were ahead of Druid, the reason why Druid was behind them is because, as I mentioned, if you remember, was that Balanced Druid was too similar to Elemental Shaman for raids, so there wasn't really a real reason to swap Elemental to a Balanced Druid for a raid, so I just dropped it. But now, if I look at it in a different way, in a different light, not really too focused on raiding, Druid jumps up again in priority. So I ended up choosing Druid. So how was my leveling since I got 3 characters to max level? So the fastest leveling was with the Windwalker Monk. Windwalker has pretty high front-loaded burst. You can pull a pack of mobs. When you go Rising Sun Kick, Fist of Fury, and then Whirling Dragon Punch, it's a very high concentrated damage. After that, you are pretty empty in terms of damage until your cooldowns are back, which is very good for questing, very, very effective. Balanced Druid was on the slow end because of the ramp up of applying DOTs. It became better later on when you could just start running around, dotting everything and trying to keep kiting everything as you keep dotting. But the speed of Druid was brought back up by the fact that they have travel form, by the fact that they can use sprint in their cat form and even stealth, so you do gain a lot of time back. The one that was slowest actually was Shaman, despite the fact that Shaman was some 30 item levels higher than the Monk and the Druid. Although, of course, it is to be expected. It was the start of the expansion, the release, so a lot more crashes and crowded areas fighting for some items or for some mobs, so it was bound to be slower, which is also why I went with my over-geared character at the start. But I enjoyed all three of them. I think it was enjoyable. When I was choosing and planning what to do with my characters at max level, the decisions were pretty fixed, of course. Being in a raiding guild as a DPS, as a ranged DPS, that was the first thing that needed to be kept in mind. Then there was also the other thing, which is for purely speed purposes and efficiency purposes, things like Torghast, things like Demo, things like clearing core links and world quests every day was going to be done as a DPS. So I had the raids that were being done by my Elemental Shaman, and then I had all of the open world content as well as Torghast as Elemental, as Windwalker, and as Balance. So the last refuge for non-DPS was Mythic Plus. This is why in my original choosing a main video I mentioned that my second choice, basically, my second character, should have been and would have been a character that can play multiple specs for Mythic Plus that wasn't a DPS, particularly a ranged DPS, since it was the same as my main. And the option fell on Monk for Brewmaster and Mistweaver, which I both enjoyed. Druid now doubles up on this. Now I have Guardian Druid and Restoration Druid. So while all the other content in the game, from raiding to open world questing and mowing, is it a word? Mowing? There is only Mythic Plus, which is going to be done as a tank or a healer most of the time. I will still enjoy doing some DPS Mythic Plus, but it is the place where you can go and play something else. It's the reason, for me at least, it's the reason why you can choose to go for hybrids, right? A lot of people often talk about the hybrid tax, the price you have to pay for being able to play a class and a spec that has different options, different choices. You do also have the benefit, which is this one. The fact that you can go and swap from Guardian Druid to Balanced Druid to Restoration Druid. Whereas if you were playing Rogue, you were just a Rogue. So the plan since the start was to just go Elemental in raids, DPS for all the other open content and solo content, and then either Brewmaster or Mistweaver for Mythic Plus, and then Guardian or Resto Druid for Mythic Plus. Now for Heroics and Mythic Zeros, of course, nobody cares. The decision for Mythic Plus will obviously come in when it is time to craft a Legendary. Yet again, I will remind everyone that it's always better to just wait as long as possible for you to craft a Legendary. And I also will remind everyone that most people won't care and just craft a Legendary on Wednesday as soon as they have enough Soul Ash and the pattern for the Legendary. But not in my case. In my case, I will still wait and then decide later on which of these specializations I want to specialize in with a Legendary. Of course, for Shaman it's Elemental Legendary. For Monk, it is tending towards Healer and probably Druid Tank. Otherwise, it's likely going to be the other way around. Thank you for listening to my diary. What we can talk about after all this stuff is done. It's been 4 days since the release of the expansion. I trust most people now are at max level, right? Surely. Even if you play just in the evening after you come home. It should be enough to get to max level now. What will come after this is going to be some dungeons videos. Since, you know, I've got 3 characters to send through 24 different Mythic Zeros and probably 70 Heroic runs or more, that's what's going to be the content. Of course, nothing too extremely in-depth. It's very difficult to make in-depth videos about dungeons when you're doing Heroics and Mythic Zeros. We'll have to wait Mythic Plus for that. But, you know, gut reactions, initial feelings, and similar is something you can always give. So, that's what's gonna be. Now, see you guys soon. Soon, in my terms, is roughly 24 hours, more or less. I'm leaving you here. I'm picking up my diary and leaving. And in the meantime, I'm gonna go off to some deep, dark dungeon.